Hey, what's up guys? Today I have a build I primarily used to run on my hunter until I figured out my Titan could do it better. In this build today, we will be doing something out of the ordinary and not be rocking a void overshield, which does give us a 50% damage reduction. The reason for that is we want 4 fragment slots instead of 3 to make this build work. So to give a brief overview of this build, we have a crazy amount of health regen, a way to consistently make enemies volatile and explode, a damage buff to our void weapons when using this build, a way to debuff enemies by 20% all the time, and we will be combining this with the best Titan exotic for PvE right now, the Heart of Innermost Light. So the overshield is not needed for this particular build. You will see me swap to the overshield when doing the seasonal heist battlegrounds activity, and the reason for that is I wanted to make sure that the timers were the same in Gambit as it was in every other activity, but I realized my buffs were significantly reduced while playing Gambit, and I know I told you guys my goal of completing all the seasonal challenges. And to do that, you need to do a lot of Gambit, but to my surprise, I didn't realize that to get the Gambit ornament for the seasonal pulse rifle, you need 2 resets of Gambit, which sucks. But this is a build I'm currently running in my Gambit farm, so let me share it with you guys. For the super, we will stick with Ward of Non, so we have a safe escape when things get ugly. For the class ability, we will have Tyrant Barricade, and don't forget, when red bars pass through your barricade, they do become blinded. So pop your barricade if you ever get cornered by enemies or you need to hold down a position. For the melee, we will use Shield Throw, so we have another ranged ability to make enemies volatile. And for the grenade, we will go with Vortex Grenade, which does have a base cooldown of 2 minutes and 1 second. For the aspects, we will use Offensive Bulwark, so we can pick up 2 fragment slots, and we pair that with Controlled Demolition, so when we hit a target with the Void ability, we make them volatile, and when we defeat those volatile enemies, we get health and our teammates get health. So you have a way to heal your teammates with this build. To jump straight into the fragments, we have Echo of Invincibility, so we can make enemies volatile with our weapons after defeating other enemies with our grenade. So now we should have 3 ways to make enemies volatile: 1 from our grenade, 2 from our melee, and 3 our weapon when empowered by volatile rounds. For the next fragment, we have Echo of Undermining, so our grenades just became a way to apply 20% debuffs to our enemies, and we will be combining this with the fragment Echo of Remnants, so our grenade will last longer. The final fragment we will have will be Echo of Explosion, so our void ability final blows will cause targets to explode. And I know the aspect Controlled Demolition already makes targets explode, but the fragment Echo of Explosion makes them explode twice, but it is inconsistent. I like to see those explosions, so that's why I wanted to pick up Offensive Bulwark with Controlled Demolition, so I'm able to get these 4 fragment slots. With that, we wrap up the Void 3.0 subclass and we jump straight into the exotic and armor choices for this build. For the exotic, we want to use Heart of Innermost Light so we can boost our abilities when we use one ability. Then you want to shoot for 100 resilience and 100 discipline so you can have a 40% damage reduction and a 47-second grenade cooldown. They are changing the damage reduction going into Lightfall, so it's going to drop down from 40% to a 30% damage reduction. Now, since we have a debuff already built into our kit, we now want to add a buff to our setup. So the way we're going to get a buff is we want to use Reaping Wellmaker. So when we pop our class ability, which is our Barricade, the next kill we do get will spawn a Void Elemental Well. That's one way we will spawn our Elemental Wells. But after we spawn those Elemental Wells, we want to use 2 Fonts of Might. So when we pick up that Void Elemental Well, we are now going to be able to gain a damage buff, and that's how we're getting a buff and a debuff in this build. But you have Reaping Wellmaker combined with Font of Might, and we're going to be rocking 2 Font of Mights combined with Elemental Time Dilation, so our buff will now last longer. And since we are stacking 2 Fonts of Might, we're going to have a longer duration. The second way we are going to be able to spawn Elemental Wells will be by using Elemental Ordnance, since our grenades will debuff targets and last longer. So like I said before, we now have 2 ways to spawn Elemental Wells in this build, and this build now has a buff and a debuff. And the way this build works is we spawn Elemental Wells with Elemental Ordnance from our grenades and weapon kills by using Reaping Wellmaker, and we pick up those Elemental Wells, and because we're using Font of Might, we now have a buff and a debuff, so we're able to do 25% more damage while debuffing the enemy 20%. Now for weapon setup, we just want to use a Void weapon as our primary weapon, so think of Funnel Web, Hollow Denial, Unforgiven, or even a Palindrome would work for this build. Other than that, run whatever you need to get the content done. Since this build isn't really reliant on an exotic, you can even pick up a Tractor Cannon. I've seen a bunch of clips on Twitter of a popular streamer using Tractor Cannon and Gambit to shut down a lot of supers. So the weapon choice is up to you. Just make sure you do have a Void weapon as your primary weapon, and you're able to get volatile rounds and Font of Might proc at the same time. And that's pretty much it for the guys. That's pretty much it for the build, you guys. If you guys liked the video, I hope you guys like, comment, and subscribe, and I'll see you guys next week.